Give it a few months, and this guy gets arrested, poisoned, and marched toward an execution. The crime? A board game. But rewind. Taro spent his whole life chasing one dream, cross into another world, and become a legendary mage. He actually pulls it off, and the world hands him the weakest magic in the room and a knack for selling board games. No cheat skill, no bloodline, no chosen one system. Just a stubborn kid who decides he will grind to the top the hard way, one board game at a time. Back to the beginning. Taru is already deep in it. Sword in hand, magic obeying him, and goblins trying very hard to make him regret it. He cuts into the first goblin before the two waiting behind it can box him in, so the fight lifts off the ground with everyone below stuck watching our boy gamble his life in midair. The goblins press him together, so Taro swaps to a staff and digs in instead of backing off. One goblin roars right in his face, and Taro answers by forcing magic into the opening and driving it back across the field. Taro gathers himself for one clean finish, then hammers the goblin down before it can recover. When he lands, the kid is still standing, still charged with power, and still hungry for the kind of adventure most people sensibly leave in books. Years earlier, before any of that power belongs to him, Taru is just a student obsessed with magic. In elementary school, he even starts a magic club and throws himself into research, chanting lines like Elorium Essentium with the seriousness of a child filing tax documents. That obsession carries him all the way to Empire University, a prestigious school known for brutal academics. Taru wants in for one reason. He plans to join its century-old dark magic society and turn campus life into the doorway he has been chasing. Inside the club room, the ritual finally answers him. Runes activate, and Taru stares at the circle like all those ridiculous years have just paid him back at once, whispering, "Finally." The next day is supposed to be the big one, so Taro prepares the final attempt with a weapon in hand and no visible backup plan. He trusts the society's century of records, the seniors' data, and his own calculations as he says this should be the final step. Taru raises both arms and fires up the summoning circle, waiting for the other world to open. Nothing happens, and he just stares at it before muttering, "No reaction." Desperate to make the ritual work, Taru turns to Pakoda and says, "I am sorry, but please be my sacrifice." Pakoda reacts, the spell twists, and suddenly Pakoda changes form instead of opening the path Taru wanted. Taru freezes and asks, "What? Did something wrong?" He looks toward the window in confusion, but the failed ritual does not let him stand there long. The circle takes Taru anyway. He is pulled from the club room screaming, "No way!" as the floor drops out from under him. Somewhere beyond that failed ritual, an elderly man faces Taru and says, "Child, what a foolish thing you've done." Back at Empire University, the news reports that fourth-year student Taru was found dead in the club room that day. Taru jolts awake on the ritual circle and blurts, "I died?" But when he remembers how badly he wanted another world, panic gives way to hunger, and he grabs for the chance before anyone can take it back. The world answers for real, and Taro can barely breathe as he says, "Huh? It's real. It's real." Then an elderly manager of souls steps in and tells him this happened under the new soul recycling law, leaving Taro stuck on the only part that sounds worse than death. Soul recycling law? The elderly soul manager warns him that people who try to carry old abilities into a new life usually end up broken by the system. Some die as babies, some are born into misery, some get sold off, and others come back as goblins, demons, beasts, or insects. Taro asks if this is about special skills, and the elderly soul manager admits those skills exist in the world he manages. A new power wakes inside Taro as Elemental Artisan unlocks, and our boy chooses the dangerous route anyway, saying this is a risk worth taking, starting from a disadvantage. Two silent watchers stay back as the power around Taro starts to build. The ritual surges out of control, bursts upward, and carries his soul toward the world he chose. In the fantasy world, Taru arrives near a medieval town and collapses before he can celebrate the landing. Armed locals approach the unconscious kid and surround him before he can move. When Taro wakes, his memories return all at once, and he thinks, "I managed to reincarnate and regained my memories." Terrified of losing the life he fought to reach, he forces himself up and declares, "I can't die here. My name is Taro." Years earlier, in Taru's new childhood, an older man points him out when he is only 6 and reveals something that marks him as different. Because of that, Taru is handed off into the dark, and his alcoholic father abandons him in a monster-filled forest. After surviving that forest, Taru runs towards Seisi, a relatively large town a few days from his village. He reaches the Adventurers Guild, the organization that registers adventurers and issues their tags as ID, and stops at the door with a quiet, "The Adventurers Guild, huh?" Inside the guild, Taru sits alone in the shadows and admits, "I'm not the one for this." Before he can disappear into that thought, Mobe, an adventurer who already knows how rough guild life gets, grabs his cloak while another voice snaps, "Mobe, no violence." Mobe hauls Taru through the guild anyway, carrying him like a problem with boots. At the counter, the guild clerk gives the registration fee, 10 silver coins, as Taru's courage drops straight through the floor as he thinks, "I'm done for." Still at the guild counter, Taru stares at the 10 silver fee and thinks he would register even if he had to borrow, but his pockets are already losing the fight. Mobe steps in with a money pouch, and the guild clerk turns it into a wager. "Let's see if this kid will work hard and repay the 10 silver coins." Mobe, the adventurer who lends Taro the money, has his own rough start behind him. The clerk says Mobe grew up an orphan and became an adventurer after a hard life, then points at Taro and says he probably saw himself in you. With the fee covered, the clerk checks Taru's skills and reads out his name as Taru Satukun before correcting the important part. His talents are Lancer and Sewing. Taru listens as she explains that repeated spear practice and clothing work can raise his parameters and unlock unique abilities. Taro tests the Lancer side right away, driving himself through the basic movements while the guild explains that the voice of the world guides new skills as they appear. Then he tries the sewing side too, and the system answers him with fresh skill notifications. The guild official finally hands Taro his adventure tag and says, "Here's your tag, proving you're a member of the Adventurers Guild. Think of it as an ID." Taro lights up with pure relief because our boy is now officially in the one place that can let him build a life by his own hands. The celebration does not last long. The guild warns him that once an adventurer reaches B rank and above, even small crimes can get them expelled and handed to the guards, while S threats sit at the far end of the danger scale. The clerk makes the rule plain. The guild has plenty of rough adventurers, but most survive by following its rules. Taru accepts the tag, knowing freedom here still comes with a rulebook, and it is not a small one. After registration, Taru starts from the bottom, and the daily grind hits fast. A hungry kid tears up over decent food and says it's so good, while Taru watches the kind of poverty that turns one meal into a whole event. The kid admits his home was worse, saying he was often beaten and kicked, so he is not attached to them at all. Taru hears it quietly, and the room goes still around that answer. Then danger barges in before anyone can breathe. A beast attacks, the kid runs, and when it lunges again, he can only shout, "What is that?" Before the beast can reach him, protective magic snaps up between them and stops the attack cold. The kid freezes under the strange power, and Taro now knows this world can protect people in ways he still does not understand. That fear drags up a harsher memory. Two starving kids fighting over scraps, yelling, "Give it to me," because leftovers used to decide who ate. Taru and the other kids sit with meager food in the ruins, and the kid snaps, "Shut up," because even a pathetic meal still counts when there is nothing else. Out in the rain, Taru holds on to what little he has, and admits that barely surviving has become routine, so he takes the work nobody wants, because this guy cannot afford pride yet. At the gutter cleaning job, Taro finishes with a ladder in hand and calls out that the quest is done. Nay, the supervisor handling the dirty work, immediately barks for him to head to the back, then recoils with, "You reek, kid." Nay stays close anyway, as Taro stands there with a bucket, filthy but paid. Then Angus, the huge blacksmith who will become Taro's crafting mentor, looms over them both looking irritated, and Taro's bottom rank life gains one more very loud adult problem. Angus is already one insult away from blowing up, and when Nay pushes back, he snaps, "I dare you to say that again." His anger flares into real fire in his hand, so Taro learns very fast that adult arguments in this world come with spell effects. Angus drags the filthy Taro toward the bath and orders, "Get in the water, hurry up." Taro obeys, and once they are both soaking, the lecture starts before the kid even gets to enjoy being clean. Angus explains that people can learn the same skill in different ways, but talent changes how fast it sticks. Taru keeps lighting fire again and again, and when Angus says this route can even lead to purification magic, Taru nearly jumps out of the tub with, "A rare spell?" At the Adventurers Guild, the branch chief weighs Taru from his seat, while Nay backs up what Mob already noticed. The spark in Taru's eyes has not gone out. Taru thanks the branch chief, gets permission to keep moving, and the joy hits him so hard he can only shout, "Whoa!" That night at the guild lodging, Taru drops into bed and tells himself, "Let's do our best tomorrow." The next push begins before sunrise, with his eyes lit from practice and the others carrying lanterns for another round of work. Back at the guild, the daily grind turns into a full schedule, because Taru still has to learn the basics this world expects from an adventurer. One guild member bluntly admits he cannot write and can only count to 10 on his hands, while Taru thinks, "My days have been packed since I started lodging at the guild." During the day, Taru takes quests from the board, then runs into Mob, the adventurer who lent him money when he had almost nothing. Taru thanks Mob properly, but a bearded guildman catches the gesture and growls, "What is that supposed to mean?" Taru keeps aiming for F rank because he wants the safer herb gathering jobs in Ranba Forest, the forest near Saisi City. He studies a plant shoot, steps into the forest, and even a fluffy rabbit-eared creature becomes part of the day's lesson list. In town, Taru buys a pouch and admits that shopping in the other world he always dreamed about is ridiculously fun. Nay's tip leads him to a secondhand shop, and this guy pauses outside, wondering how his first meeting with dwarves will go. Inside the smithy, Taru politely says, "Excuse me," and a dwarf craftsman answers from the forge with a short, Taru follows the metalworking talk as best he can, thinking you strike metal while it is hot, then watch it get tempered in water. Taru accepts the craftsman's offer with a handshake and says, "Alright, I'll take you up on your kind offer." The lesson turns physical fast, with Taru practicing swordwork until he finally lands a fierce strike and laughs through the effort. By the end, Taru is left standing exhausted in the smithy. He thinks the meeting with dwarves was supposed to be the day's highlight, but the whole thing went nothing like he expected. After the smithy lesson, the dwarves hand Taru fresh clothes, and he admits they feel way better than what he has been wearing. While he tests his appraisal skill, he realizes it refuses to read people, but it does read objects, quest loot, and even the material of a necklace. Taru asks how it handles low-rank items, already trying to turn every odd rule into something useful. Later, Nay, the quest giver who keeps Taru moving through local work, studies his garbled skill text and suggests it might be tied to healing. Taru triggers Purge instead, and the result comes out as a solid cleansing skill, not a healer's full path. The more Nei explains it, the less normal his skill list looks. Taru gets called out again and moves like he is already halfway to the job. But when he checks what he can buy, our boy hits the ugliest monster in town, his own budget. Then he notices something wrong inside the building, snaps into focus, and grabs Nei's arm before the chance slips away. After that job, Taru lights up over getting paid a second time in one day. Angus, the blacksmithing mentor who has been drilling him through forge work, hears him brag and answers like this kid keeps turning errands into payday practice. Taru bolts out with a quick, "I'm off," chasing the next small win before anyone can slow him down. Back at Angus's forge, the lesson turns from swinging metal to understanding it. Angus shows Taru that tempering iron makes it harder, but also easier to break, and the piece shatters right in front of him. Taru watches closely because better gear starts with knowing why cheap gear fails. Angus brings out a strengthened blade and explains the fix. Tempering and annealing work together. He shows how lower heat and careful striking make the metal tougher, then finishes with a blade that can take more abuse without snapping. Taru takes it in like a student who knows one good weapon can keep him alive. Angus adds one more trick, coating the blade with special clay during tempering. Taru recognizes the idea from television and says he sees it, turning a random memory from his old world into a real smithing clue. The forge suddenly has homework, and the homework can cut things. Because Taru understands what experts value, a new ability opens for him, Eyes of Truth. He politely tells Angus, "I'll be taking my leave then," and heads out with a skill that can judge things before his wallet gets ambushed again. At the market, Taru tests Eyes of Truth on everything he can get near. It separates ripe fruit from rotten fruit, fresh ceramics from old armor, and useful goods from tired junk. When the shopkeeper pushes one item, Taru refuses and picks another, trusting the skill over the sales pitch. Taru chooses a belt, and the elderly seller blurts, "You can read?" That surprise tells Taru his item knowledge and literacy gap are both going to matter out here. A little later, he carries a fragile crate through the market, muttering steady as he turns another simple job into balance training. Taru keeps testing Eyes of Truth, and now even color and dye stop being guesswork for him. Around the Adventurers Guild, the staff already treats him as the reliable errand runner, the kid who can be trusted with small jobs while he builds real skills. At the training grounds, Daz, a staff trainer, notices Taru has gotten leaner and says, "You may participate in our training, Taru." Taru steps in, sees the level of practice in front of him, and can only breathe out, "Wah." Daz tests him right away, and Taru barely blocks the first staff strike. Daz says, "Good reflexes," then lunges again before this guy can enjoy the compliment for even half a second. Daz warns, "Brace yourself," and hammers the lesson into Taru the painful way. Taru coughs through the hit, and Daz cuts straight to the problem. "You let your guard down." Daz slows down only after Taru has eaten enough dirt for the day. He tells him that strength starts with basics, then fixes his stance so Taru has something sturdier than raw enthusiasm to stand on. That night, Taru collapses onto his bed and groans, so tired. But rest does not last, because his next experiment with Purify kicks in hard enough to jolt him upright. The spell keeps pushing through the filth in the room until the grime finally gives up. Taru stares at the cleaned walls and realizes it worked. The walls were originally white. Taru celebrates like he just won a boss fight against Mildew, then keeps practicing until Purify answers more cleanly in his hands. The spell is no longer just a trick for chores, it is becoming something he can control. His training takes a stranger turn when Taru finds himself facing an armored figure beyond a barrier. A heartbeat later, the setting snaps sideways, someone blurts, "Huh? What?" And Taru drops through the air yelling, "Dude, what is this?" Back at training, Taru keeps working with wooden swords, smaller than the other trainees but already carrying his own self-taught style. The guild staffer explains why higher ranks are not handed out freely. Adventurers have to prove quality before they are trusted with deadlier work. The warning lands with a wolf as the example, because this job kills careless people. Taru faces that risk and repeats the only answer that matters to him. Being serious, right? Angus, the blacksmith who has been teaching Taru the craft, offers him a forged short blade and asks, "Will you take it?" Taru accepts it, gaining a weapon made for his current hands instead of one borrowed from luck. Taru also understands that otherworld knowledge can help him, but it can cut back if he uses it carelessly. He reads about a vagabond dying to a monster, then hears people call it foolish to register at the guild without any backing. So Taru trains harder, but his form gets too wild. An observer warns, he's swinging too much, that's risky, and Taru forces himself to adjust before bad habits become scars. When the correction finally clicks, Taru clenches his fists and bursts out, "I know, it is not polished yet, but the young master now has a path for the blade in his hand." With his combat basics growing, Taru turns his modern knowledge toward daily survival next. He aims Purify at a container and narrows the idea down to one clean use. Eliminate only microorganisms. Taru raises the vial and casts Purify. Now his skill is not just cleaning walls or gear, it can make food and water safer while giving him another way to be useful at the guild. Taru brings out a bread nobody in the guild can place, and one customer blurts, "Bread that I've never seen before?" Instead of backing off, Taru kneads the dough beside them, shapes it by hand, and waits for the oven to finish the experiment. When the loaf comes out, Taru studies it with a quiet little victory in his face. A customer leans in, caught by the smell, and asks, "It has that faint fruity smell. What's this nice aroma? The building next to the Adventurers Guild, the organization that gives adventurers their tags and work, runs as a canteen pub managed by the guild. Taro's new bread starts pulling in ordinary customers too, so his food is already doing guild work without swinging a sword. One cautious customer eyes Taro's white rolls and mutters, "I don't know about this." Then he bites in, chews once, and changes his whole report to different texture than wheat bread, chewy or tasty. Taro pushes the menu further with monster meat, thinking since they don't use chopsticks here, and dices everything small enough for spoons. He sautés the meat with onions and seasoning, and the finished dish lands so well that customers start calling, "5 servings please." The canteen crowd is not gentle with praise either. One customer stares at the dish and says, "How can livestock feed taste this amazing?" Then another immediately asks for some too. Then Taru's strange skill system fires on its own and announces special skill activation. It names the condition as food evangelist, and Taru can only wonder if that means someone who makes food taste better before the next notice gives him plant knowledge. The kid waits for some grand change, but nothing hits him, so he grumbles that he does not feel any different. Outside, he tries to force the new ability away, thinks maybe if I appraise them, and gets the crushing answer: the plants are weeds. At the guild, Nay, the quest giver who handles small jobs like gutter cleaning, is already dealing with a G-rank cat search while her Gramps is out. She tells Taro to stay put, then asks Taro for his adventurer tag before he writes anything down, and our boy hands it over without fuss. Taro lights up when the tag record comes back to him, but the moment he steps into the guild hall, the ledger slips right out of his mind. A door bursts open, Taro draws his sword, checks it and says, "All set," before striking the ground and forcing weeds to surge up around the blade. Back near the guild, Taro has a new sword, a fresh tag, and the same stubborn plan: get strong enough to live as a free adventurer without anyone dragging him around. He wants to test the blade, but he hesitates and thinks, for now, I should... Right before the monster roars and makes the choice for him, Taro draws the sword and commits first, driving the monster back with one clean strike. The hit lands, the monster cries out, and our boy gets his answer fast. The sword works. The monster answers harder than expected and knocks Taro off his feet. He twists mid-air, shields himself with his backpack, and stares down the follow-up attack coming straight for him. That backpack is having a very long workday. Taro forces the sword back into play while the wounded monster tries to finish him from range. The system suddenly activates, and Taro blurts what is happening as his body launches forward faster than he can read. Taro cuts past the demon before it can recover, then realizes the new speed is real and snaps. This is fast! The fight stops being a test of the sword alone, because this guy just found out his upgrades can save his skin when a monster stops playing nice. After that close call, Taro keeps building himself piece by piece instead of trusting one lucky skill. He trains under Angus, the blacksmithing mentor who teaches him weapon work, and he adds archery until his arrows start landing where he wants them. Taro calls it persistence, and he sticks with that answer even while thinking about reincarnation and the weird road that brought him here. At a relaxing inn, he introduces new items that become instant hits, then teaches Angus how to craft a katana, so his skills start spreading beyond his own hands. The training pays off when Taro hunts down a one-horned rabbit for his first monster kill. From there, he moves into real fieldwork, heads for the northeastern forest, gathers herbs, and plans routes carefully, so today's quest ends fast instead of messy. While sorting the haul, Taro spots Gallic grass mixed in with the herbs. That find gives him one more useful piece for the guild grind, and it keeps him moving toward the life he came here to build. In Ranba Forest, Taro feels the air go wrong, and tightens up before the goblin steps out. He mutters, "Oh, a goblin," and draws his weapon because this is no herb run anymore. Taro keeps the goblin in front of him and forces himself to fight instead of freezing. When more movement stirs around him, the kid kicks away through the leaves and buys a little space. Taro reaches for the trick he has been training, and the system answers, "Stealth cloak activated." The skill snaps on hard enough to rattle him, and Angus, his blacksmithing mentor, grabs his attention with a warning, "Choose the right place to use that." Back in Ranba Forest, Taro crouches low and checks the area, asking himself, are there monsters around here too? When he spots a horned rabbit, he judges it fast. Edible meat, sellable skin, and a clean chance to practice. Taro activates Stealth Cloak again and drops on the horned rabbit with his sword ready. The hunt ends cleanly, and even the rabbit's tiny "okay, got it" energy feels unfairly polite for something about to become materials. Then Taro notices another monster sign and stops kneeling over the catch. Before he can settle the question, trouble hits elsewhere in the forest, and a desperate adventurer begs, please contact the guild. The request turns Taro's small hunt into a guild emergency. Yemhi leaps out to hold the line, while the others tell him, please hang in there until reinforcements arrive, and the report lands hard. Leo, the warrior called 5 Arrows, is fighting about 80 goblins. At the Adventurers Guild, the organization that sends adventurers on jobs and enforces its own rules, Yosire orders every ready member to assemble. Taru answers with a short yeah, because backing out now is not really on the menu. Yosire spreads the plan out and gives Taro the job that only he can do right now: guide the rescue team to Leo. Red team moves with Taro, Blue team becomes the messenger base, and the whole group snaps back, yesier. On the way out, Yosire tells Taru, stay calm, they will be here soon, and Taru grips his sword tighter. Our boy wanted adventure, and the forest has now filed the request in bulk. Near the battlefield, 2 reinforcements drop in and immediately check on the fighters already waiting. One snaps, "You took forever." But the next question is all worry, "Are you okay?" The rescue plan tightens fast as orders pass down the line. Flu team must secure the escape route. The runner takes the handed items, the 3 charms go with him, and the next move depends on getting that route open before the goblins swallow the group. At the new fallback point, the field leader asks the team, "Can you secure an escape route here?" The answer is grim. Green team can only buy time by pulling the goblins away, and Flu team is already calling for support. Leo, the warrior holding the goblin line, reports in fast. "It's bad. There are too many goblins. We need reinforcements." The coordinator takes the reports together and calls it clean. Every team is pinned down, and the goblins are pressing from all sides. 3 veteran adventurers step in before the line breaks. Their commander tells the waiting team, "You can leave the rest to us." And the veterans rush straight into the goblins before anyone has time to argue. The commander gathers himself and wipes out the goblin push with one decisive attack. Above the mob, Leo plants himself on a rope, tightens his grip on the axe, and drops into the swarm to split their advance. The goblins try to answer with a blast at point-blank range, but Leo takes it head-on and stays standing. He lifts his axe and says thanks, like the goblins just handed him a warm towel. Leo forces the goblins back again, drives power through his axe, and throws up a barrier that stops the next wave from reaching the escape route. The recoil still knocks him back, but he steadies himself and says no problem. Another veteran drops in above the battlefield while Leo holds below. He laughs, haha, then blows the goblin formation apart so hard the rescue line finally has room to breathe. With the worst of the goblin rush broken, the veteran catches himself and says, "Whoops, I need to get back to the guild." The fight is handled for now, so the next problem moves indoors. Back at the Adventurers Guild, the organization where Taru registered and gets work through his tag, Taru greets the gathered members and asks, "How did it go?" The pressure snaps a second later, and our boy blurts, "Help." Before relief finally catches up with him, Taru looks around at the survivors and says, "I'm glad everyone's okay." But once the fear settles, he admits he did his part and still feels uneasy because his combat skills are not enough. A mentor watches Taru with his sword and reads the same problem. His swordsmanship is decent, but decent will not carry him through battles like that. Taru wants to test whatever other abilities he has, because standing near veterans just gave him the loudest progress report possible. Alone again, Taru settles on the only answer he trusts. "In the end, what I need to do stays the same." The kid keeps training because freedom in this world is starting to look very expensive. Later at the guild entrance, Nay, the quest giver who supervises odd jobs like gutter cleaning, greets Taru with, "Good day." A blonde guild member spots him, reacts with a sharp huh, and notes that it is rare for Nay not to be at the guild. The calm breaks when a white-haired guild leader hears the news and snaps, "Hold on, is that true?" He turns to the whole room and commands, "Everyone listen to this," dragging Taru and the guild straight into the next urgent problem. Inside the guild, Nay's matchmaking proposal hits the room, and the whole place takes it personally. One guild member sulks alone, muttering that he thought he had a special bond with Nay, while the others grab him before he can turn heartbreak into public property damage. The restrained guild member keeps raging, swearing he will never forgive the bastard trying to take Nay. Nay turns to Taru and asks, "Satu, didn't you hear anything?" And suddenly our boy gets volunteered for the least heroic quest in the building. The guild assigns Taro to follow Nay for the day and report back, and Taro immediately asks why it has to be him. The answer is basically everyone cheering him out the door with, "Go get him," and "We'll be waiting for your report." Out in town, Taru climbs high and scans the area, murmuring, "Around here." Then he spots Nay walking with an unknown man and locks onto them with, "Target spotted, who's that man next to her?" Taru hides and studies the stranger beside Nay, wondering if this is the rumored matchmaking candidate. When the man stands close enough to put a hand on Nay's shoulder, Taru goes still and thinks, "I knew it." From the rooftop, Taru stares at the tiny distance between Nay and the rumored suitor and decides he needs the truth before he reports anything back. He looks toward the village, startled, then commits to spying on the two of them until he knows what is going on. Taru's mind runs straight into disaster, Nay saying, "I love you," the suitor answering that he wants to spend the rest of his life with her, and then the proposal landing with, "Tarumi." Taru freezes at the thought and blurts, "What?" Now Taru imagines walking back into the guild with that news, and panic takes over. He spreads his arms and thinks, if Nay gets engaged, how am I supposed to tell everyone in the guild? Still stuck on the stranger, Taru starts to ask who that man is, then goes straight to Nay and asks if the matchmaking rumor is true. The question lands hard enough to stop the room cold. Nay sits across from another person in a tense silence, while Taru listens and wonders if the other person is Nay's mother and what they are talking about. Nay stands in the middle of the gathered crowd with the pressure written all over her face. Taru, caught in the middle of the mess, asks someone to cut him some slack. Then an elderly man pushes the marriage talk even further, asking whether Taru would consider marrying his daughter once she is older. The conversation turns emotional as two people hold each other, and one of them swears to do well in this world so their parents can be proud. By the next day, Taru walks back toward the guild with the whole Nay problem still waiting for him inside. Inside the Adventurers Guild, Taru walks straight back into the Nay mess, and the room goes stiff the second he arrives. Nay looks rattled too, still caught between the matchmaking talk and the people waiting to hear how it ended. Nay admits she is still wondering what happened with the matchmaking story, but the guildmaster cuts in before the crowd can turn it into another public trial. He tells her, "It's okay to be upset, you were also a victim of their mischief." Nay refuses to let the punishment land on anyone else and pleads, "It doesn't bother me, Guildmaster, please forgive them. The Guildmaster snaps into a beast-like rage anyway, and the people under him suddenly remember that begging only works when the boss is not showing fangs. With the mood still tense, the guild pushes Taro toward a city wall repair quest, and the adventurers split between calling it boring and calling it brutal. The Guildmaster holds out the work order, so our boy takes the labor job instead of arguing with a room full of tired adults. At the wall site, a worker grumbles that the job is all heavy lifting because the pay is usually too low. Taru remembers that back when he was G-rank, he was too weak to even consider this kind of work, but this time the budget is decent enough to make the pain useful. The crew moves out to the quarry, and Taru takes in the place like a kid finally seeing a fantasy worksite for real. He thinks so this is what a quarry in another world looks like, then admits he does not care about hauling and stacking rocks. Taru only accepted the quarry work because he wants to test his eyes of truth. Before he can start swinging, the instructor stops him and explains the basics. Some stones hide valuable materials, and if Taro finds one, he gets paid. Taro activates Eyes of Truth, and the skill starts sorting the quarry in a way normal workers cannot. It labels ordinary coal rock first, but when the instructor tells him to ignore the waste piles, Taro checks anyway, and the instructor freezes. Taro strikes into the discarded stone, and the hidden ore bursts free under the skill's readout. The window names it Mithril Ore, and Taro blurts Mithril Ore as the system confirms he has unearthed treasure with a single strike. The system links the find to precision, the same kind of control needed to hit a target dead center. Taru grips his sword and starts connecting that idea to another skill he can chase next. The Mithril sale lands at 105 gold coins, and the worker flat out asks Taro, "What are you going to do with all this money?" Taro stares at the payout with the others around him because one repair quest has suddenly turned into life-changing cash. The group breaks into a full celebration, and Taro lets himself enjoy it for a second. Our boy came here to fix a wall, and now everyone is cheering around a fortune he dug out of trash stone. When the first rush calms down, Taro turns to Nei, the quest giver who supervised his gutter cleaning work, and asks, "Nei, do you have any ideas on what to do with the remaining money?" Nei points to Moeb, the adventurer who once lent Taro money, and suggests donating to the orphanage like he does. Nei says she witnessed that charity donation at the guild building, so the group immediately starts treating Moeb like a model citizen. Moeb folds under the praise, gripping his head while everyone crowds him, and his quiet good deed stops being quiet. Then the town's attention keeps growing around Taro, from grateful companions to a showy spell circle behind him, and even a shakedown in the street drags him into public view. When two thugs bark, "Give us your money," Taru steps in with the others and shields the kneeling victim before the scene can turn ugly. Baron Sasai, the local authority figure, enters the mess by name, and Taru soon catches sight of an image that looks way too much like him. He blurts, "Isn't that me?" then forces himself to breathe and says, "Calm down." Back in town, Nei warns him, "You're drawing quite a bit of attention." Taru answers that the town is too fixated on him, so he wants to make a game that gives everyone something else to talk about. Taru tells Nei, "Don't worry, I have a secret weapon." When she eyes his suspicious face and asks if this secret weapon is criminal, he quickly reassures her it is not, which is exactly the speed of denial that gets inspected twice. Taro thinks that some Otherworld fans might call this move boring, but he disagrees hard. With nobles, rumors, and random trouble piling up, this guy reaches for the oldest imported trick in the book, a simple board game. Taro starts with a square board, cuts the lines into an 8x8 grid, and prepares the pieces. Once the last pieces drop into place, he folds his arms and announces, "It is done." Nei asks, "How do you play it?" Taru explains the rule plainly. Surround the opponent's pieces with yours, flip them, and keep fighting for the board until the end. The first match turns calm instructions into war almost instantly. Taru throws himself into the game. The players treat black and white pieces like rival armies, and every flip hits like a duel. One exchange lands so hard that the players cry out, and the board answers with the first clear result. Black has 4, white has 1. Taru's distraction works fast, because now the town has a new thing to obsess over. Nei keeps testing the board, and the score stays tight. Black 6, white 7. Then she spots a stronger line, drops her next move, and suddenly black jumps to 23, while white sits at 18. Taro answers her pressure with another move, but Nei refuses to back off. When the last pieces settle, she throws up her win with a clean 40 to 24, and Taro takes the loss straight on the chin. Taro says, "Okay, I won't lose this time," and starts the rematch with real focus. Nei leans into the challenge, warns him he still does not understand her strength, and the board turns into a pride fight with tiny stones doing all the violence. Nei catches the change in him and asks, "Were you going easy on me during our first game, Taro?" Taro does not need to sell the idea anymore, because the game is already making people argue, retry, and suspect each other over little black and white pieces. With Reversi already pulling people in, the talk shifts to business at the Adventurers Guild, the organization whose name carries enough weight to protect a popular shop. Some people tried copying the guild restaurant's success, but none could knock down the original while the guild's reputation stood behind it. Nei studies the board and says, but this is different. When Taru asks what she will do, she considers using Leo's name, since Leo is known as the Seisi Branch Guild's top adventurer, but that same fame could make the move look suspicious. So Nei reaches for a cleaner backer, a sincere man who donates to the orphanage and already holds trust at the Seisi Branch Guild. She says he would gladly accept, and the plan moves from a clever game to an actual deal. Garfish, the trader who handles Reversi sales, seals the first agreement with a hand handshake. After that, Taru steps into the guild hall, hears the terms and accepts because the deal gives the game a safer path into town. The next handshake locks in another partner, and Nei gets to work with tools and paperwork. She points out that for collectors and nobles, even a quiet measuring ability can become valuable once it is tied to production. Nei demonstrates the skill on wood, measuring it with almost unfair precision. Once she sees it working on larger materials too, she realizes this could push a craftsman toward top-notch carpenter work, and she celebrates like the wood just handed her a career plan. Then Taru unveils the premium bait, a reversely limited edition ultra-rare wood-carved statue priced at 15 gold coins. He pauses at the price, but keeps moving because noble collectors are exactly the kind of people who pay extra for a rare label. At the shop counter, Taru explains the push clearly. Good products do not always sell themselves. Promotion is key. The crowd reacts hard, and an older customer asks what game this is while another man grins, calling it completely new and unlike anything they know. With Reversey finally giving Taro money, contacts, and a little breathing room, he pushes the game harder so his free adventure life does not depend on one lucky sale. The cat-eared player stares at her board and blurts, "You actually beat me, really?" And the whole group cheers because the game is already turning strangers into repeat players. Taru gives them a thumbs up and says, "Good, let us keep up this pace." A few hours later, the shop is packed, the line spills outside, and the crowd treats a board game like fresh bread during a famine. Taru also hands over distribution rights, so the sales do not bottleneck at one counter. In Seisi, a town short on entertainment, young people grab onto Reversey fast, and even confused onlookers start drifting toward the noise. The game spreads because anyone can play it, even the elderly, and old Tia starts dominating the center table. When someone points Taru toward the posted notices, the team is already talking like this little Seisi craze could reach a bigger city. One player tells Taru, "With the team doing well, we might compete in the big city. I owe you one." Another answers, "Same here," and the two lean together in relief as Reversey stops being a side hustle and starts feeding real hopes. Elsewhere in Sesai, Baron Sesai, the local authority figure, hears the reports with a much colder face. The town may be buying Reversei, but the trouble around the adventurers is not waiting politely in line. Baron Sessi says their behavior is bad, and a guild staffer snaps that cheating and fights with locals are dragging the guild's name through the dirt. The Baron adds that internal security is worsening, and his request for more troops from the feudal lord still goes nowhere. The forces he does have keep getting pulled away to suppress bandits and control crime. Even the relaxing inn sales and the Reversey commission keep the business afloat only for now, so the money arrives with trouble walking right behind it. Because Taro's name is spreading through work and guild life, the next push comes from training, not sales. Roy, an A-rank adventurer and martial arts instructor, explains that the local adventurers are strong because they were trained by a former A-rank guild leader and serious combat teachers. Taru then learns the part nobody warned him about. Leo, the warrior already fighting goblins, and Daz are both A-rank adventurers. Roy notices the shock around him and tells the worried adventurer, "Don't let it get to you, you're a fine adventurer." That reassurance does not last long. A hesitant pause turns into panic when an adventurer is blasted upward, and the people below look up like the training yard just filed a complaint in person. A tall fighter steadies himself with allies at his side, ready for the next hit. The lesson lands fast for Taru. The town's veterans are not impressive on paper. They are dangerous right in front of him. Back at the guild counter, the receptionist asks Taru, "Is this the quest you'd like to take?" Taru answers yes, but her small him says the request is not as routine as he wants it to be. Inside another room, a nervous man faces a child and struggles to answer. When the child leans in and demands, "Answer me," the pressure around Taro's growing name tightens again. The veteran trainer stops answering Taro with words and drives a fist straight at him. Taro takes the hit, gets knocked back, and has to brace before the next one comes in. Taru shakes off the daze, but the trainer keeps pressing him, shouting as he forces the kid into a rough hold. The watching men close in, and the test turns into a full wrestling match before anyone can pretend this is polite training. Then the whole struggle collapses into embarrassment. The trainer sweats through the silence while Taru stands there in full adventurer gear, cloak on, weapons packed, looking far more ready than the grown man expected. At the guild, Nei, the quest giver who knows Taro's name, steps in and asks, "You're Taro-kun, right?" The older man snaps back, "I'll pay you right away," but his anger only makes the room stare harder. The older man keeps doubting the story and barks, "Wait a minute, this kid must be lying." A guild staff member cuts in before he can keep swinging his mouth around, warning, "It's rude to behave like this in front of other customers." Nei backs Taru in front of everyone and warns the troublemakers, "If you bother Taru-kun, the entire town will be against you." The townspeople immediately pile on, shouting that Taru treated everyone generously, and the older man's excuse starts running out of floor. Nei adds that this is exactly what people expect from Taro's background, and the older man tries to leave before the shame catches up. Someone calls after him, "Hey, where are you going?" while Nei stops the room with, "Please wait a moment." Nei apologizes for her father and says, "Even though I've cut ties with him, I apologize for the trouble my father caused." She offers compensation, but Taru takes it calmly and answers, "No need for a receipt, while his injured hand leaves him staring at the whole mess in confusion. Outside, two men square up again before Taro can get a clean ending to the dispute. Taro apologizes for the disturbance, and Nei accepts it with, "It's okay, Sonny," just as he notices someone waiting in the doorway. A few minutes later, in Ranba Forest near Seisei City, Taro's next problem drops him straight through the mist. The kid falls into a ravine, and a massive creature's tentacle catches him before the ground does. The creature lifts Taro high with vine-like limbs, pulling him toward its claws while he hangs there with no clean footing. He reads the strange leaf bud on the appendage and realizes this is not a normal beast attack. A few minutes earlier in the same forest, Taro had been gathering a flower for the quest. That simple herb job is what puts him close enough for the creature to grab him. Taro spots something wedged between two thick trunks and pulls closer, hoping it is tied to the creature that dragged him in. When he checks it with his skill, the readout hits him clean. This is a sword made by Angus, his blacksmithing mentor, and it is worth 15 gold coins. A bearded swordsman recognizes Angus's work and freezes for half a second. Then greed takes over, and he snaps, "Hand over that sword." Taro does not hand over anything. He triggers Aura Sense, calls out for the man to wait, and keeps the blade ready while he drops into the fight with no time to explain himself. The swordsman barks, "Boy, you are not fit to carry that sword. Drop it." A nearby group sees Taro cornered and calls out to him, but our boy has already shifted his stance around the blade. Taro answers the threat with one clear line, "For justified self-defense." The sword dispute turns into real combat, and neither side gets to pretend this is just a polite argument over craftsmanship anymore. After that forest mess, Taro pours the tension into work and finishes 10 limited edition reversey boards bound for the capital. He studies the finished pieces and admits good handiwork still needs real skill and taste, then thinks his old art classes finally paid rent. A bald buyer asks how many boards Taro managed to finish, and the answer knocks the room straight into money mode. Gold starts flying around while Taro stands there thinking, "And here I was hoping." The coins are louder than the compliment. The capital trip moves from business to safety planning, as hands clasp and Mina, a C-rank female adventurer traveling with the group, warns that the road has more than monsters on it. She says rumors of bandits are spreading too, so Taro gets dressed in formal clothes for meeting nobility and looks deeply betrayed by fabric. On the forest road, the carriage rolls out, while the handler explains the highway should be safer because traffic is heavy and troops guard the rest stops. Taro still pictures the classic merchant convoy ambush in his head, because fantasy worlds do enjoy checking the obvious boxes. Mina stands ready in the carriage as the group notices someone watching from a distance. She reads the scout as a possible bandit with an appraisal skill, so everyone tightens up and stays alert. A masked fighter watches from behind armor, and Mina steadies a companion before the group talks through the danger indoors. Their hope that the convoy will stay safe dies fast when the attack finally hits and the road turns into wreckage. The road answers Taro's old ambush fantasy with a body in the snow and a convoy ripped apart. Over the wreckage, the only words left are, "Reality is cruel," while a survivor leads a horse through what remains. After surviving the wrecked road, the group finally reaches the capital. Someone spots the city ahead and blurts that it is already in sight, while Taro covers his face and accepts that this place is going to be a lot bigger than he pictured. A companion warns Taro that the capital's height will hit harder once they get closer. Inside a bright hallway, Taro admits, "I'm getting nervous," and the kid keeps walking anyway. They step out into the capital, a packed fantasy city where even dragons move through the skyline. Taro stares at the streets and says, "It looks like another world," which is fair since this place is not exactly hiding it. The group takes in the capital one shock at a time. One companion gasps, "Amazing," and Taro notices races he has never seen before remembering with a wince that he completely forgot something important. The party decides to report the completed mission to the Adventurers Guild, the organization that issues tags and handles adventure work. Mina, Taru's guard and companion, says she will stay with Paolo's group as Reo's guard, so the capital trip splits into practical errands fast. Taro watches the Five Arrows adventuring party move through the capital like they already know every street. When Mina points toward the castle and offers to guide him, another companion notes that she sounds like she has done this before. Taru spends half a day hunting for the Adventurers Guild headquarters, before he finally notices the tower. Our boy came to another world ready for monsters, not urban navigation. Inside the capital's luxury inn, Taro can only get out a stunned wow. Mina looks around and asks if hotels in this world are all this fancy, because this one is already aiming at noble money. Taru's nerves return once the month-long quest comes up. Mina confirms the job lasts a full month, and Taru quietly wishes he could come back after 5 days instead. Mina tells Taru to bathe and get a good night's sleep before departure. As a regular at the relaxing inn, she has picked up a refined palate too, so even the food here gets judged properly. Garfish, the trader who manages Taru's reversey sales, laughs when business comes up. He tells Mina that missing an opportunity is not how a businessman thinks, and Garfish sounds far too pleased with that rule. The next day, Taro reaches the first-class noble residential area, and the streets change so hard that even the mansions look like castles. Mina tells him to calm down, then admits it is her first time here too, and she is also in shock. Taru sees Mina stay composed anyway, and he thinks her calmness is reassuring. The young master follows her into an ornate courtyard with a fountain, trying not to look completely out of place. Taro looks up at the mansion and asks, just who in the world owns this mansion? Garfish answers that this is the mansion they were scheduled to visit, the home of Duke Valiera, the Prime Minister. Inside Duke Valiera's mansion, Garfish lowers his voice and reminds Taru that this visit is significant, so Taru needs to do his best. The mansion staff leads the group deeper inside, and a formal attendant announces, "Everyone has arrived." The attendant gestures them forward with, "Please come this way." But Taro does not walk in blind. He quietly thinks, "Presence detection, activate." In the moment he checks beyond the doors, our boy realizes the room is packed. Taro steps into a hall full of high-ranking nobles, and the official announcement names him as the reversey tutor, arriving with garfish traders. He scans the room and thinks, they all look like high-ranking nobles, while every important face turns toward the commoner child brought before the Prime Minister. Taro feels the room pressing in and thinks, I feel like I am being sized up. Then a new skill answers that pressure on its own, and he thinks, if I learned appraisal inhibition, does that mean I was being appraised? The nobles blink at him and one of them calls out, "Young man." Another admits, "I heard that you were a child." So Taro stands in the center of the gathering, while the room adjusts to the fact that Garfish's reversey tutor is basically a kid with scary manners. The staff guides Taro toward the match table with, "This way please." Someone checks on him with, "Aren't you a bit unsure?" But Taro sits for the game and answers calmly, "Understood, let's have a good game." The watching officials whisper that he is well-mannered for a commoner's child. Others worry over the real test. Taru has to prove his reversey skill against Duke Valiera while staying polite enough not to insult the Prime Minister. The pieces hit the board, and Duke Valiera opens with calm confidence. The first match begins even at 2-2, but the Duke quickly pulls ahead, first 4-1, then 9-2. A spectator mutters that the top disciple does not seem very impressive, and the board seems to agree when Duke Valiera stretches the lead to 15 against Taru's 6. Taru keeps thinking instead of panicking, and this guy starts turning the board back on the Duke. Taru's delayed plan bites in hard, flipping the score until he leads 29-11. The table resets and the next game begins from zero pressure again. Duke Valiera black, Taru white, 2 pieces each. In the second match, Duke Valiera pushes early and takes a 10-5 lead. Taru stays at the board, forced to prove that the first swing was not a lucky accident. Duke Valiera keeps pressing the second match, but Taru refuses to rush the finish. But by the end, the count turns against the Duke. Black sits at 22, and Taru's white pieces climb to 35. The third match starts fresh, 2-2, and Duke Valiera faces Taru like he wants the board to confess first. Taru stays quiet, watching for the mistake instead of chasing an early lead. The board tightens, and Taru lets out a small, thoughtful, Duke Valiera reads the shift too late, and his own confidence starts working against him. After the match, Duke Valiera admits, "I have become overconfident after a long time." He still thanks Taro for the lesson, and Taro's win carries him deeper into the kind of room where nobles stop treating a game like a toy. Because Taro beats Duke Valiera in front of elite company, the questions move from reversey to Taro himself. Duke Valiera says, "I caught a glimpse of your abilities for a moment, but then they vanished," and Taro realizes his new skill does more than hide him from appraisals. Duke Valiera asks Taru to drop the appraisal block so he can introduce him properly. Taru thinks he's noticed my ability, then waits until no one is watching and quietly turns it off. The moment Taro lowers the block, Duke Valiera freezes and blurts, "My word!" Taro sees the result too and lights up because his stats have risen and his grind was not wasted. Taro checks the papers with a troubled face and remembers Nei, the gutter cleaning supervisor, who once noticed something similar about him. The nobles point out that martial arts alone cannot explain professions like Holy Knight and Hero, and Taro's strange spread of skills becomes impossible to ignore. Duke Valiera also notes Taro's blacksmith, woodworker, and alchemist proficiencies, none of them fitting neatly together. Then the request lands. The prince wants Taru as a tutor once a week, and on the other days, the kingdom wants him teaching its people. The formal pressure eases for the night, and Taro gets praised for his work before giving a simple thanks. A maid asks where he wants dinner served, and this guy chooses the room first, bath after, because one quiet meal now sounds better than another noble table. The staff moves fast, sending Taro and his companions meals to the room and starting bath preparations. Even the servants talk like Taro is being handled as a noble now, whether he asked for that upgrade or not. After dinner, Taro asks about exploring the capital. Mina, his guard and companion with a sharp eye for good food, says she has no set destination and will follow whatever sounds interesting. In the capital now, Taru leads Mina toward a nearby stop and answers her question with, "Just nearby." They arrive at the cellar magic shop, and the shopkeeper greets them as they step inside. Inside the magic item shop, Mina stops at a backpack on display and asks, "What is this?" Taro's noble success has now pushed him straight into expensive magic gear, and Mina is already trying to figure out what makes this bag special. The shopkeeper explains that Mina has found a magic storage backpack, a unique item made by the famous artisan Jean Fellow, and tells her the staff can check the price. Mina asks if she is buying, but she only says she needs to check something first. So the shopkeeper guides Taro and Mina upstairs to look at more magic items. Upstairs, Mina studies the magic goods while Taru follows the prices and uses in his head. For a self-made adventurer, storage gear is not just fancy shopping, it decides how much loot and supplies he can carry without turning every quest into backpack punishment. Later at the palace, an official announces that Taru has arrived and welcomes him in. The attendants line up as the official gestures forward and says, "This way, Taru-sama." So this guy walks deeper into noble business with Mina close behind. Inside the palace grounds, Taro passes through the huge gates and into a courtyard guarded on both sides. Mina stays behind after the official tells her, "See you later, Mina," and she answers calmly, "You got it." Taro reaches the double doors alone, and they open into a bright room waiting for him. There he meets 5th Prince Flu, the royal student he has been called to teach. Prince Flu looks Taru over and cuts straight at him, saying, "You really are just a kid. Can a child like you really teach me?" Taru does not bite back. Our boy simply answers, "I look forward to it," and starts the lesson anyway. Taro brings out reversey boards and pieces, and the lesson turns serious fast as the boards float under magic control. Prince Flu clutches his head when the setup overwhelms him, then grabs the board with Taro as the match pulls him in. The prince breaks down when the pieces scatter and his plan falls apart, while Taro keeps the game moving. Then Prince Flu asks if Taro used that same method to beat Prime Minister Duke Valiera, and Taro only smiles back. That smile is way too innocent for someone holding a board game crime scene. Prince Flu admits he could not believe Duke Valiera lost until Taru showed him the techniques himself. He and Taru clasp hands. Then the prince throws both arms up and shouts, "Let's do this," as the training turns from one lesson into a real partnership. Because Prince Flu improves under Taru's intensive guidance, so the lessons jump from weekly to 3 times a week. Taru holds a game token and explains the new pace, and the prince's skill keeps climbing under the heavier schedule. Elsewhere in the residence, a concerned attendant apologizes for interrupting and asks about the royal carriage waiting outside. Mina and the others react at once, and the news sends someone bounding down the ornate staircase with full commitment. An elf attendant offers deep apologies while showing damaged clothing on his hands and arms, but the mood flips when he explains the reward attached to the carriage. Taru will get access to the finest full-course meals, and for Mina, that detail lands harder than any royal seal. Right now, Taru's self-made adventurer life has carried him from gutter jobs to royal rooms, and he is trying to turn that access into more freedom without getting owned by it. The reward dinner goes wild fast, with one entertainer promising a passionate night with dancers, then another selling adventure tales about valley bungee jumps and jungle cruises with rare animals. After that chaos, Mina notices their lodging has changed and asks who arranged it. The elf attendant admits he moved them because the innkeeper looked miserable, the staff stood out too much, and he could not refuse the pressure without making it awkward. Then Sebi, Duke Valiera's polished household attendant, appears and calls out, "Sato-sama! Mina-sama!" Mina thanks him properly, and someone praises him as capable before Taro freezes and says he does not remember introducing himself. Taru finally hears the name clearly, and his brain trips over it. He blurts, "Wait, his name was really Sebi?" while Mina sinks into pure second-hand embarrassment. The lesson results arrive next, and Prince Flu, the young royal Taru has been teaching, stands with him in high spirits. They celebrate together with a full yes, because 1 month of Taru's guidance has paid off in front of everyone. A speaker announces that thanks to Satodono's guidance, His Highness has truly become stronger. Flu steps in himself and tells Taru, "Call me Flu," dropping the distance between prince and teacher in one clean line. That royal lesson opens a new door for Taru, so the focus shifts from board games to the magic he gained from the whole exchange. A system message hits him with spirit magic in fire, water, earth, wind, lightning, light, and dark. Then a garbled special skill activates before Flu brings up the earlier investment into that same strange skill. Later, with a teacup in hand, Taru tests the prize and thinks spirit magic should be the ultimate otherworld skill. Then his result comes out tiny, and he admits his fire magic is about the size of a lighter, while every other magic ability sits around life magic level. Taru leans over the balcony and decides the real issue is authority, wondering whether a commoner like him can even use this power freely. Below him, a dragon waits with an armored elf attendant nearby, and Mina asks if he is ready. The official business follows. A bespectacled official presents a token of appreciation from Prince Flu and Duke Valiera, the Prime Minister whose mansion has been hosting them. Taru and Mina feel the gift and hesitate over how light it is, until the official relays Flu's message that money feels embarrassing, but Taru should accept it anyway. Then the amount lands. Taro and Mina both snap 20 platinum coins, and that reward sends Taro straight back to the shop where the clerk annoyed him last time. Taro browses first and decides not to buy anything on impulse, but when he spots a large backpack protected by security magic, he picks it up and says, "I'd like to buy, please," only for the shopkeeper to calmly name the price, 10 platinum coins. The shopkeeper warns Taru that plenty of buyers promise to pay, disable the security magic, and run. Taru catches the suspicion aimed at his group and thinks maybe these guys are one of them too, so he cuts the whole problem short and puts the money down. "I'll pay it right away, here." The shopkeeper stares at the coins and blurts, "Where did such a young kid get all this money?" Taru, now carrying prince-level reward money and very little patience for haggling, adds, "I'll also take the small magic storage pouch." 10 platinum coins later, his backpack is no longer the only thing doing serious labor. With Taro finally stocked up, the group hits the market stalls and spends while the money still exists. This guy goes in with the simple plan of buying what he needs, and somehow the plan grows legs, grabs a basket, and starts sprinting. Before Taru can fully recover from the shopping damage, a hooded figure singles him out. The stranger says, "You there, young one," then fixes on him and says he can sense vibrations of a different world coming from Taru. Taro freezes at the words. He crossed into this world on his own and kept moving by effort, but now a stranger can feel the other otherworldly trace on him without Taro saying a thing. A few days later in Seisi City, after the contract work as a reversey instructor is settled, the day comes for Taro to head back. The cart rolls out and our boy sits with too much on his mind for someone who just survived the capital and left richer than he arrived. On the way back to Seisi, Taro thinks about what Garfish, the trader handling reversey sales, told him. He wonders if some of the things he bought even matter anymore. But the capital business keeps moving without waiting for his nerves to catch up. Back in the capital business talks, Baron Ceci, the local authority tied to Ceci, asked the Garfish trader's representative how everything went. The representative pushes for luxury and limited edition reversey boards made by top craftsmen in the capital, and Baron Ceci agrees with a handshake. The representative looks ahead and says he hopes to keep a good relationship with Taru and Mobe, the adventurer who helped Taru early on and developed the game with him. Baron Ceci notices Taru has almost no greed, then sends the representative off with a gift of thanks. Garfish Traders promises Taru that reversey sales are in capable hands. With the deal settled, everyone trades final thanks, and Taru feels the capital stay stretch oddly long and short at the same time as he says goodbye to it. As they load up, Baron Ceci marvels that Taro's bag can fit all that cargo into such a small space. Taro looks at the magic storage, the adventurer party, and the road under him, and thinks he is finally living the otherworld life he dreamed about. But the good mood does not clear everything. Taru admits some things still bother him, and Leo, the warrior who has fought goblins before, warns that bandits are showing up on the highways again. Leo tells him to stay cautious and rely on the adventurers guilds in each town if trouble hits. Taru thinks of Leo, nay, the gutter cleaning supervisor who helped him with guild work, and Mobe, hoping everyone makes it through safely. That worry follows him all the way back to Seisi. When the party reaches the Adventurers Guild, the organization that issues tags and keeps adventurers under its rules, Taru is home again, but the road has already warned him what kind of trouble waits outside town. The capital money phase is over, and the next wall in Taru's free adventurer life is uglier. Bandits, dangerous quests, and people who want useful adventurers under their thumb. Back in Seisi, the group celebrates finally reaching town, and someone says, "We are back in Seisi." At the Adventurers Guild, Nay, the gutter cleaning supervisor who still keeps an eye on guild work, checks on the capital trip and notices Taru's new leather armor. Leo, the warrior who warned him about the roads, keeps it simple and tells him, "See you later then," before leaving him to report in. Taru submits the quest report at the guild desk, but the reward is limited to 1 payout per quest. To keep nobles and nosy officials off his trail, the report goes through without revealing Taru's name, and the stamp marks the job under the fake name Jiro Sugar. The fake identity does not keep the work small for long. A formal-looking official handles the next assignment. 2 others are sent to Garfish, the trader managing reversey sales, and sealed containers are prepared as the summoned adventurers gather inside a stone hall. Inside the stone hall, Taru examines a dark cloak while the room settles on him as the one being sent out. When his name is called, he stiffens, answers yes, and admits, "Well, I am a bit anxious because this job is solo." Someone immediately calls the solo job too hard, but Taru still heads into the forest alone. The place feels wrong from the first step, and he mutters, "This place has a creepy vibe," while every tree around him looks ready to report him to HR. Moving deeper, Taru remembers, "I used to run away all the time, but this time he forces himself to search instead of flee." He activates presence detection, strengthens himself, then hides under stealth cloak when goblins come into range. Taro counts only 2 goblins and thinks, if it's just 2 goblins, I can manage it with a surprise attack. He draws his bow, fires first, and drops the opening goblin before it can warn the rest. Taro pushes straight at the surviving goblin before it can recover, but the fight gets loud, and by the time the quest item is in his hand, 3 more goblins have already boxed him in. Taro realizes the problem too late and thinks, oh no, did the noise attract more of them? A larger goblin with an axe steps in. The pack rushes him, and Taro gets pinned while fighting upside down to keep the swarm off his throat. Pinned under the goblin swarm, Taro catches the next strike on cross blades and drops to 1 knee, already weighing the ugliest option. He thinks, should I run away? But the leader closes in, and Taro forces himself up with 1 answer left. It's all or nothing. Taro reaches for the 1 skill he nearly forgot and mutters, authority skill activated. The goblins freeze mid-rush, and this guy spots the opening at once. Yes, they stopped in their tracks. Now's my chance. Taro drives through the stunned pack, then switches to his bow before the leader can recover. He growls to settle this, and the shot breaks the swarm apart before it can pin him again. When the forest finally goes quiet, Taro drops to a knee and admits, if I hadn't remembered my authority skill, I'd have been in trouble. Then the pain catches up, and all our boy gets out is, ouch. Back at the guild tavern, Nay, the quest giver who watches over these jobs, sees Taru stagger in and asks, what happened? You are all beat up. She calls, Taru-kun, checks him over, and only relaxes when she can say, good, you are safe. Taru tries to brush it off with, when it comes to battles, but Mobe, the adventurer who once helped him with money, puts a hand on his shoulder and warns him that luck is part of surviving too. Then Nay hands him a letter, and the kid's face tightens as he reads it. At Baron Seisi's mansion, Baron Seisi, the local authority figure, studies Taro and says, so you are Satu? Taro answers, yes. And Baron Seisi tells him that nobles in the capital already know his name because of Reversey. Baron Seisi says he wanted to meet Taru in person, then moves straight to the offer. Will you accept the role of Reversey mentor? Taru came back from goblins with bruises, and now the nobles have found him before he can even breathe. Before that invitation can settle, the guild calls everyone to the quest board with a public announcement. Nay steps in with the problem and says, the thing is, bandits, then repeats it plainly. Bandits. Sheik, an E-rank adventurer with merchant skills, details, lays out the team plan. 3 teams of 3, with him handling negotiations. He introduces Kuzert as the leader, and the next job already sounds less like a simple quest and more like Taru getting pulled into other people's trouble again. Taru joins the temporary bandit hunt team without trying to sound bigger than he is. He introduces himself as Taru and tells them he is ready to help, then points the plan toward the first real step. Once they narrow the base down, the hunt can actually begin. The scout takes the pressure on himself and says he will use his skills to search the area properly. With the others counting on him, he locks in hard and says they have to make the operation succeed. At the suspected village, a guard stops Taru before he can wander in. After sizing him up, the guard allows him to wait by the shed, but warns him not to enter the village. Inside the hideout village, Burn gets questioned about the strangers and warned not to do anything reckless. Then a familiar voice cuts through the tension, and Taru freezes as he realizes Sok, his father, is there. A long-haired man bargains with a scarred man over the refuge fee, and the haggling turns into the team's cover. Taru watches the village mood, the villagers' behavior, and Sok being sheltered there, and the pieces line up. This village is the bandits' hideout. One teammate admits he thought the haggling would expose them, but the others explain that paying up front would have looked even stranger. That answer lands, and the group understands why the annoying little bargain just saved their disguise. Men on horseback approach before the team is ready. One of them mutters that the bandits noticed them faster than expected, and another confirms the read with certainty. There is no mistake. With Sok involved and the village on alert, the team stops treating this like a quiet scouting job. They avoid the main road to keep from getting surrounded, then choose the harder route through the forest and mountains at night to shake off pursuit. The 3 scouts bring back the location of the bandit hideout, and the report moves fast. A guild official gathers the team, confirms the information, and sends the news out by horse before the bandits can disappear. That report turns the job into a region-wide extermination quest, with multiple adventurers guild branches joining in. The Sessi branch, the local guild office near Ranba Forest, fills with preparations as adventurers push to be included. Taru ends up on the roster for his first large-scale quest, and the launch is no longer some distant plan. Our boy wanted adventurer life, and now it arrives before dawn, with paperwork, weapons, and a lot of people pretending they slept enough. Before dawn, at the bandit fortress, Taro moves in with his bow while the guard tower watches for trouble. The front line forms up in tight order, and the extermination quest begins with everyone waiting for the first opening. Roy, the A-rank adventurer leading Taro's martial training, gets the assault plan clean and brutal. Split the force, hit the fortress from the back, secure it, and rescue the hostages. The 3rd squad waits for the signal, then storms the village while the bandits are looking the wrong way, but the rain leaves Taro's team going in without a clear layout. From the watch position, Taru studies the bandit village and realizes it is not some loose camp. Fences, watchtowers, and tight defenses turn it into a small fortress, so our boy takes the high ground with his bow, because his archery and hidden presence are the safest way to open the attack. Taru fires first, and his arrow tears into the bandits inside the fortress, hard enough to give the assault team its opening. Roy answers with one clipped word, and the fighters below lock into formation as the raid finally moves. Then Taru's hands start shaking. He thinks even though they are bandits, this is my first time assaulting somebody. But the line is already moving, so the kid forces himself back into the quest and keeps his bow ready. A frontline fighter pushes through the fear and launches himself at the defenses, straining upward until the whole team is staring at the spiked structure blocking their way. He climbs it by hand, then yanks the fence straight into storage with a blunt call of storage, tokens, mans. The bandits panic as their own defense suddenly fails, and one screams, "Wate!" Another guard snaps. How did they invade so easily? Before a bandit mocks a young fighter with, "young lady," and rushes him with 2 others. The red-haired fighter refuses to fold, blocks the 3 attackers, and drives them back with one heavy counter after another. When his attack spreads through the packed bandits, a hero skill surges with the call, "Hero's High Hiwi," and the enemy line starts breaking in place. The strategist wants the bandits scared before they can regroup, saying this should demoralize the enemy, and the mage follows with, "Spirit magic, earth, precision." The strike drops into the enemy ranks. Their leader still shouts for them to attack, but the report comes back cold. Fortress has been taken. Even with the fortress lost, an older swordsman refuses to step aside and tells the red-haired fighter, "I'm confident in my swordsmanship too." Taro's side has the fortress now, but the last defenders are still trying to make them pay for it. The mage calls "Spirit Magic Dark," and the bullhorn leader staggers under the curse. The red-haired fighter takes that opening, cuts him down clean, and crashes into the ground hard enough to scatter the defenders around him. The remaining defenders try to surround the red-haired fighter anyway, with one soldier stepping up like he can still save the fortress. A moment later, Taro's allies are standing in the dust, and one of them is already throwing up a peace sign. Victory etiquette apparently includes posing over rubble. Back at the captured fortress, the relieved adventurers crowd around Taro and tell him, "Taro, thank you, you saved us." Taro bows off the praise with, "Yes, I managed to be of help," even though everyone here knows his support kept the assault from turning ugly. After the bandit quest, Taro's work gets recorded as a clean success, and the Adventurers Guild starts treating his skills as the real thing. Since temporary teams need reliable help, the kid begins taking more jobs with them, instead of hiding behind beginner status. Later in town, Baron Seisi, the local authority, sends letters offering to take Taru into service. Taru keeps choosing adventure life instead, because freedom is the whole reason he crossed into this world in the first place. That refusal does not stay polite for long. A formation of knights marches up, announces, by order of Baron Sussy, and demands, is Taru here? The guild gate suddenly has less foot traffic and a lot more steel. At the guild gate, Taru faces the soldiers, while Viscount Ceci, a noble trying to pull useful adventurers under his control, snaps, what's going on? Taro's growing fame has reached him too, so the Viscount keeps sending messengers to make Taro a vassal. Leo, the warrior already known among adventurers, gets dragged into the same pressure and loses patience with the Viscount's one-sided offers. Even when Viscount Ceci promises a lavish life, Leo answers, I wish to continue my life as an adventurer, so I humbly decline your offer. Viscount Ceci drops the charm fast and warns Leo, you will regret wasting the Viscount's generosity. Angus, Taro's blacksmithing mentor, looks at the mess and asks, how did things come to this situation? One warrior explains that rumors about a more popular adventurer in the city have stirred up resentment, and the offended side approaches the group to force the issue. A warning cuts in, leave before this escalates, but the soldiers charge anyway. Their leader steps in with soldiers at his back and says, I hope this settles it. Taro still worries about the rumors clinging to him, even after everything he has done for the city. Nay, the quest giver who supervised Taro's early gutter cleaning work shuts that worry down and says the rumors are baseless. Mobe, the adventurer who once lent Taro money, backs her up with, you're a good guy here, and the others agree before Taro can talk himself into guilt. The group keeps piling on support, don't let it get to you, and one even admits his kid is a fan of Taru. Taru finally lets it reach him and says thank you everyone. Then more armored knights march through the stone gate toward them, and someone groans, what is it this time? Taro's wish to stay an adventurer is still standing, but the nobles are not done knocking on it. Nay, the quest giver who has watched Taru claw his way up from gutterwork spots the danger first and warns him, don't go outside Taru. Taru freezes when the guards announce it is not another complaint this time, and he blurts, a warrant of arrest? The courtyard goes quiet as the commander raises his fist and warns, resistance will not be tolerated. Anyone who interferes will also be arrested. Taru reaches for his weapon, but the threat is aimed at everyone around him now. Nei covers her mouth, then tells him, Taru, I can't trouble everyone at the guild anymore. With the guild trapped beside him, the commander steps in and declares, Taru, you're under arrest. Taru stops fighting before the guild gets dragged down with him. He stands still, lets the armed guards take him away, and Nei watches with the rest of the guild as their best defense walks out in chains. Because Taru surrenders, the guards move him away from the guild and into prison. Inside the stone chamber, a strange signal identifies him by name, and our boy is cut off from the life he was trying so hard to keep. In the prison chamber, Taru clutches a wooden box while an elf interrogator corners him with an accusation. Your father was a thief, wasn't he? When Taru does not give the answer he wants, the elf grabs him and presses harder. You helped him flee, didn't you? Taru crouches over the box, shaken and stuck with no clean move. He mutters, what should I do? Then realizes the seal on the box has locked him down. My magic is sealed. Even Taru's magic storage is blocked. So escape is not as simple as pulling out the right tool. He steadies himself with one hope left, telling himself everyone at the guild will come to help. 2 weeks after Taro's arrest, the fight moves from prison walls to noble rooms. Garfish, the trader who manages Taro's reversey sales, rushes to Duke Valiera, the prime minister and mansion owner, and the Duke cuts straight to it. I'm quite busy, so make it quick. Garfish bows and says, Duke Valiera, I need to talk to you about Taru. The moment Taru's name reaches the Duke's desk, the problem is no longer just one arrested adventurer. At the noble meeting, a court official argues they must involve His Majesty in this matter, but another warns that domain matters should stay inside the domain. The room starts untangling the politics. Viscount Ceci belongs to Marquis Haragura's faction, so helping Taru means stepping into noble territory, not just filing a complaint. One official pushes for a softer route and says they should ask the queen to persuade the throne. Another noble brings Taru up with open concern, while the report around the throne warns that the case is threatening to shake the foundations of power. A nobleman raises both hands and admits advising the king directly would be unprecedented, so the young noble chooses a safer path first, meet with his brothers, then ask his mother for help. Back in the stretch of the past, the palace is still buzzing over the prince's legendary reversey match with Duke Valiera, the prime minister who owns the mansion where Taro's game spread. Taro, the young reversey instructor nobody expected to matter this much, turns into palace gossip before he can even defend himself. In prison, Taro feels poison crawling through his body and thinks maybe I should have just admitted to the crime, but the otherworld answers before his panic can finish, and our boy gains status ailment resistance and recovery right there in the cell. Taro remembers the old fortune that once sounded too big for him, and the thought hits him in the dark. Was this the destiny that fortune teller spoke of? He is alone, poisoned, and locked away, but that word keeps pulling him back. Years earlier, Taro met a masked fortune teller who looked at him and said his fortune carried the essence that heroes bear. The vision that followed threw him against a dragon. With a fortune teller watching like this was all already written down somewhere. In that same memory, a red-haired figure gave him one word, destiny. The fortune teller told Taro his skills would prove useful someday, and back then, the kid brushed it off as far-fetched. Back in the prison cell, Taru grips a wooden plank and finally accepts the possibility he used to laugh away. He tells himself, if this truly is destiny, I won't be here much longer. Nearly 3 months after Taro was imprisoned, the fight moves from his cell to a grand hall full of nobles. Baron Baron Sessi, the local authority tied to Taro's case, is summoned and asked if he understands why he has been called. The accusation collapses into the open. The Reversi tutor was held under false charges. Concern spreads through the hall, and even the outcry from outside can no longer be waved away. Baron Sessi tries to smile through it and bows with deep apologies for the concern he caused. His face works overtime, but the room is not buying the performance. The blonde noble hears enough and dismisses him with a cold, "I'm relieved to hear it from you, you may leave." Then he turns to Greto, another noble pressing the matter, and asks, "Does that satisfy you, Greto?" With the political door finally cracked open, the younger nobles gather with excited relief, and Taro is carried back from the nightmare that trapped him for months. He is still worn down, but he is going home. Back among his people, Taro is grabbed from behind and welcomed with a tearful, "Welcome back, Taro." He answers softly, "I'm back," and the whole group bursts out shouting his name. Taro reunites with his friends, and for once, nobody is asking him to invent a game, fix a noble problem, or survive a cell. They just hold on to him like they were scared they might not get the chance again. Later in town, the damage around Taro's name is still being sorted out, because the Adventurers Guild and the Commercial Guilds both criticized him during the mess. Even Garfish, the trader handling Reversi sales, hears that his traders had joined the criticism too. At Duke Valiera's Grand Manor, the public reaction stays quieter than expected, even with a feudal lord on the other side of the dispute. Taru, after everything, focuses on the one victory he can feel right away: a fluffy bed. When Taro jokes from under the covers, a man smacks him on the head and says if he can joke, he must be fine. Then another voice calls out for Nay, the quest giver who once supervised his gutter cleaning work, and the room snaps back into motion around him. Back at Duke Valiera's manor, Taru finally gets room to breathe, and he spends it the way he trusts most, building himself back into a free adventurer. Taru raises his sword and tells himself he is getting back to sword training, then drives through the practice until his focus hardens again. After training, Taru lays out rare goods he bought from the capital, and the others gather around them with open curiosity. Mina, his guard companion with the sharp palate, asks if he wants them to try something, so Taru brings the new ingredients into the kitchen. In the kitchen, Mina helps Taru prepare the dish, and Taru calls it a magical dish that can enchant anybody. When she asks how to make it, Taru admits he has eaten it before, but the spice mix in his memory is hazy. A month later, Taru is still chasing that flavor, stirring curry powder again and again. The spice blend fights him harder than expected, and the kitchen fills with smoke while everyone reels from the smell. When the smoke clears, Taru faces the strange pull around him, and names it in one word: fate. He stands armed again, still chasing his own path as an adventurer, but the power gathering around him points toward a danger that will not let his peaceful days stay peaceful for long.